recorder and then. Okay. Is he virtual?
Yes.
Okay.
So he'll be streaming in, and so he'll be talking. You'll be able to hear over the air, like through the air. So I would just say, if you're, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you're running for, and then we have a few questions. And then we're definitely saying, we have a few questions for you. And run that along. If that sounds okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and it'll go pretty quick.
They also enforce state election laws. So we can ask with all the gerrymandering and all of the other issues.
How would you enforce the election laws?
Yeah. How do you maintain the ethics or the enforcement of election laws even when it's contended that they're not valid, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what was contended.
Yep.
Election laws.
Election laws and they
When they were deemed spoiled.
yeah, or when they remember when it was Robin Voss, Speaker Voss, had that special master to come in and do that investigation to see if what Wisconsin's elections were valid, don't you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Or legal. So his
When challenge, I'm just going to put on there when challenge.
okay. I'll ask the question because he's over the Ethics Commission, what his office is going to do to advocate for the return of business registration and lobby regulation back to his office.
Okay, because I was just going to ask him about the maintaining of the election laws.
Okay.
When being challenged.
Okay, and mine is more about lobbying and business registrations because then there's checks and balances. Okay, Toss, do we need to find you a question or you have one?
Probably find one, I guess.
What's on?
Probably use one, I guess.
Okay.
Or if we're good with three, I can just do it.
Okay.
It's a little windy out, so we'll still get to it. It's supposed to be on the wind.
I can just do the introductions and stuff.
Okay.
Leave it at that.
Okay. I'll find you one then. I can see what his. can talk about, can you share your experiences about your renewable energy initiatives? Because it says he's started the Clean Wisconsin and has focused on renewable energy since 1970. Okay, I'll screenshot this and send it to you. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sent. Okay. Isn't that bad? Oh my God, this guy's smart. He has a PhD from Columbia University,
I just was like.
but in
shit.
organic chemistry. Yeah.
Holy shit.
He earned a PhD in organic chemistry from Columbia University. And he later became an assistant professor of chemistry and ecology at UW Parkside. Holy crap. He's like a nutty professor, isn't he? Yeah. So Taz is going to ask, because it says he started Clean Wisconsin and has focused on renewable energy since 1970. So he's going to ask, can he share why that's so important to him, or the significance of that, and what in his position or in his role would he do to continue that endeavor, especially because of climate change and all those things. So, and I'm going to ask the question about his lobbying activities and what is my question? For if he could speak to his advocacy of returning business registration and lobby regulation back to his office. Okay.
Okay.
We already ate, my God. You have to eat 3 times today.
Actually, I haven't eaten yet.
Well, get over there and eat.
I know, I need to. You know, the signs are really pretty, but the light, you gotta turn it down because you can't. It's really.
Does it reflect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And are you guys okay with the light? I mean, because I turn it down, I couldn't keep my eyes open. So if you need that.
So he's going to come late. So does that mean then that pushes? So who is doing Lieutenant Governor Barnes's?
I was gonna actually ask.
Do you want us to do Brad's now, if he's going to be late?
Barnes actually called in an executive 45.
Okay, but Brad could go before Doug too, because he's here.
He's here.
Brad, he has a beard. He's here.
He's the one that has the better beard than I got.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that now? I'll call in executive.
You mean Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we could do Brad. Well, he's here. No. Sure. No, he's right here. He's right there. He's straight back. Okay, so now you guys were taking Brad first. So we have to switch gears. But you could still ask about education. What do you want to ask? We could use some of the,
I could probably just keep mine on environment.
yeah, on environment. What do you want to do for Brad?
You're gonna do education and environment.
Yeah.
He's doing environment education. What do you want to do?
What is his background in?
Brad?
Politician, official department member.
No, this is the,
I found him.
Yay!
I might
He
not-
said you had the better beard.
better beard. Took me 17 years to grow this beard.
I'm just gonna ask us a real simple question about agriculture and trade and how it affects Wisconsinites after the pandemic and how that is
Okay. Brett, I'm gonna ask you the question about if you could expand on your Office of Prescription Drug Affordability. Does that work? I'm gonna ask you about prescription drug affordability and what is your strategy towards that? Does that make sense? Do you want to talk about that? What do you want to talk about? We can.
Yeah, I'm not the guy that's on the list. I'm Jacob Anaplas, 8th Congressional District
Oh,
candidate.
Jacob. This is Jacob, not Brad.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jacob, and you're running for what now?
Wisconsin's 8th Congressional.
8th Congressional.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So Act 31 would be a good question.
Okay.
Um,
Where's he at on here?
he's not.
Oh.
Okay, so we have to do introductions.
You're not
OJ, are you
Brad.
going to do introductions?
Pleasure to meet you. Jacob Anaplas.
Jacob Banham.
Pleasure to meet you guys.
Jacob.
Pleasure.
Jacob, spell your last name for us.
Vanaplas.
And.
V-A-N.
Mhm.
D-E-N.
Mhm.
Capital P-L-A-S.
Thank you.
Libertarian Party.
Got it.
Different take on politics.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, no. This is a different guy. His name is Jacob Banham. He's a congressman candidate. He's this guy.
So
isn't
how this
here.
is going to go,
He's coming
Jacob,
in
is
late.
we're going to
I had
introduce
to
you, and then
change
we're going to give
gears
you
around
some
a little
time,
Okay.
and then we'll just field some questions if that's okay with you.
Hit me with the hard stuff.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if you introduced yourself to this gentleman here. This is Chairman Weigel.
Jacob Anaplas, pleasure to meet you, sir.
How do you say that last name?
Vandenplas.
It's Dutch. Okay.
Hey, I'm Van Zyl. That's Dutch.
I like it. I like it. That's perfect.
Vandenbaum. Did he say Vandenbaum, right? Jacob Vandenbaum.
Sorry. See if he's on.
Vandenbos. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just leave that up. Is everybody,
Are we ready? So, oh, okay. So Jacob, Chairman Hill will introduce you, and then we'll give you the floor for a few minutes, and then he'll just field questions from this table. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic.
Something Thursday, meeting Chairman Hill.
Okay, I'm sure, right? You came to visit us too at my tribal council meeting. You came to my tribal council meeting.
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I actually got a phone call from Mr. Joe Miller yesterday.
Mm.
Good guy.
Mm-hmm.
We talked mainly about Aaron Rodgers and how terrible season the good guy. Definitely heard those concerns of his, but unfortunately could not help in that scenario. Although Aaron Rodgers is 38 and I'm 38, it's a sort of a shock, right?
Yeah. Anything's possible.
Thumbs up.
Okay. Ready?
All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. This afternoon, I'm on a panel here with Stockbridge President Holsley, Chairman Ryan Reynolds, Chairman Van Zyl, and our President White Eagle. This afternoon, we have Libertarian candidate for the 8th Congressional District. And I'd like to introduce Jacob Vandenplas, and you have the floor now, and then we'll field some questions from our panel after your introduction.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. Ooh, that was loud. Sorry, I'll get used to the microphone here. We kind of have a love-hate relationship. My name is Jacob Vandenplas, and I am Chairman of the Libertarian Party of the State of Wisconsin and the 8th Congressional District candidate here for 2022. Now, libertarianism is a little different animal. It's a little different breed of politics. We believe that the political battle that we face as a nation isn't right versus left. It's we the people versus an authoritarian government. We see right now that our elected officials in Washington, D.C. bow first and foremost for their major corporate donors. Then they'll vote for their party. Then finally, we the people will get a voice. Libertarians are here to defend self-governance, individual liberties, and sovereignty, especially of our native tribes. That's a quick, brief overview. So I'll keep it short and sweet. I am much better at answering questions and be able to tailor a libertarian question to that. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that introduction. I'll turn it over to President Holsley.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome. Jacob, as you know, as tribal nations and tribal sovereigns, many of us have tribal police departments, and many of our police departments are cross-deputized within the county in which we reside. However, there isn't parity or equity to the benefits that tribal police officers enjoy, as you would find in a police officer from a local municipality or the state. There have been many efforts to create that level of stability and parity, and if there is currently a bill on the floor for, it's called the Tribal Police Parity Bill, and essentially what that would do would give tribal police officers the same benefits that any other police officer in the United States would be entitled to. So can you speak to whether or not that would be something that you would choose to support, understanding that it's exceedingly important, knowing that many of the tribal nations are some of the largest employers within their respective counties and have that cross-deputization but don't have that same equal protections that other police officers have?
Yes, one of the major things that we like to focus on is the equality across the entire country. And I would even take it a step further to encourage to actually reduce the overall size of the federal government so that local resources are more available within our local communities so that we can fund our local police departments effectively. The decision when it comes to policing is always best served at their own local communities. The role and responsibilities of the federal government is to ensure those individual liberties and equality across the board. So yeah, that would be a piece of legislation I would certainly support.
All right, thank you, Jacob. Next, a question from Chairman Reynolds.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
It's always great to be working with people who are on the Hill. My question to you is, I'm a big two-way guy, and I would just like to hear your comments on, with kind of following up. It kind of goes with President Holsley's question about law enforcement. law enforcement's got their jobs and duties, but how do you perceive getting law enforcement to kind of look at 2A as a good thing rather than a bad thing, if they look at it negatively?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking. The Libertarian Party and myself, we believe that your right to self-defense should not be infringed upon. That might not be a popular opinion, but we do believe and would actively work to actually repeal federal gun legislation. Again, something that should be kept up into the communities as well. An armed community and armed civilians are better protected communities. So, but that also means you need to be responsible too. It's not just running around all willy-nilly. We need to be able to provide the training so that we can effectively defend our homes by ourselves. The call time that it typically takes by the time you call law enforcement with a home burglary is an extensive period of time. If you are armed, that cuts that time and that protection down significantly. But we also need to be careful. It's only a matter of time before a good guy with a gun gets shot as well.
All right, thank you, Jacob, for your answer. Next up, Chairman Van Zyl.
Good afternoon, Jacob.
Hello.
I don't want to tear up your last name. Could you repeat it for me, please?
Sure, it's Vanden Plus, and just about everybody
Vanden
messes it up,
Plus.
so I won't be offended.
Jacob, I'd like to speak to you about some stuff regarding education. Do you understand what Act 31 is in the state of Wisconsin? And, you know, my name is Robert Van Zyl. I'm a tribal chairman of the Secaucus Chippewa tribe. And I'm a former teacher, educator. And what about more mandating of Act 31 regarding hunting, fishing, and land and treaties and water? That represents sovereignty, doesn't it?
I would say so, yeah. Travel, so I'm not familiar with the specific legislation within the state of Wisconsin because I've been focused strongly on the federal legislation. But in regards to protecting the environment, I'm an organic produce farmer that practices regenerative agriculture. We only have one planet, and we can argue back and forth all day, global warming, a climate crisis, but we're not doing an adequate job protecting our national resources. And we, as within our own communities, can definitely do a much better job of being able to protect those.
Sir, maybe a brief follow-up.
Yep.
You know, if we mandated and moved into Act 31 to move into education, don't you think you could make it a stronger case for people to have a better understanding, so there's more education and awareness versus the opposite, negative racism?
Yeah, everything comes down to education, and as even with what I do on my farm, we've got a nonprofit organization, DC Farm for Vets, where we actually train other veterans on how to grow produce and live sustainably. So the education of our natural resources and how to maintain those and how to make sure that we're protecting our communities for in the future is absolutely paramount, yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Jacob. Next up, we have President White Eagle.
Yes, good afternoon, Jacob. Thank
Good
you
afternoon.
for taking the time out to be with us here today. Just have a question in regards to tribal sovereignty and as well as the initiatives to ensure voting rights are available for tribal members, and how do you envision working with the native nations of Wisconsin in your representation of the at the 8th district?
First and foremost, every elected representative should be available to actually speak with their tribes. If there's issues, I want a phone call. I'm not going to stand up here and pretend to know every detailed nuance of every single reservation and every single industry within the 8th Congressional District of the state of Wisconsin. It's about building relationships and actually being the representation of the people within my constituency. So that's going to come down to developing relationships. I look forward to sitting down hopefully next week with Chairman Hill and getting that relationship kicked off, as long as everybody else here in this panel as well.
Very good.
All right, thank you, Jacob. And I guess the question for me, I guess, is more in the environment. So tribes have a unique relationship with the federal government, and many of us have very robust environmental programs to steward the environment into which we live and share. What are your views on tribal sovereignty and how that interaction with the United States government as it comes to protection of our reservation lands and ceded territories?
Reservation lands would always come first. That is your tribal lands, period. And I can go and elaborate and talk long about that, but if you want someone to stand in the way of the federal government to protect your tribal lands, I'm the guy.
Jacob, on your website, you talk about you staunchly believe in the right to bear arms, and you talk about some of your philosophies or covenants with regards to that. As you know, that we've seen a lot of violence throughout the United States, gun violence. You talk about opposing laws that would require registration of firearms. Can you speak to if you become our congressperson, how you would assure then the health and safety of firearms that are falling into hands that intend to harm people and not be the gun being used for its intended purpose?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And that one I do leave up to on the localities. I do believe having the availability of a universal background check, even when I've talked with gun store owners, they want to make sure that they're not selling to violent criminals as well. So when it comes to policing and keeping neighborhoods safe, I do rely heavily on local law enforcement able to do as such, but I also believe that good ideas don't require force. So if we're able to perform or we're able to produce a quality background check that people can use, and not just gun store owners, even as a personal individual who wants to sell a gun to somebody, I want to be able to make sure that I'm not selling it to someone who's done violence. That should be available. As far as registering guns, I think that might end up being a nightmare of a process to clerical wise. But I do lean heavily on the local law enforcement to be able to keep a finger on the pulse as far as community safety. And when it comes to what our police forces look like, if we do need to have more of the social worker aspect of it, that's what when we define, bring everything down to local communities, we can have local level governance and police departments that fit and tailor their own local communities with the problems that we do face. We do have a mental health crisis in this country, and there is not enough resources available for mental health. I'm a veteran who has struggled in the past with PTSD, and I can tell you even through the VA, there's not enough resources for mental health. So as far as creating a gun registry, I'm not certain how that would have solved the violence problem. Rethinking how the level of violence that we find acceptable within society is something that I would like to address. If you are convicted of a violent crime, I think that those penalties are half of what they currently should be. Violence upon another human being is absolutely not tolerated. That is something that we do sign within the Libertarian Party as a non-aggression principle. We don't believe in violence or the threat of violence to force your political views on anybody, or violence in general. We are anti-war, but when it comes to gun violence specifically, I think we need to stand more culturally than we do trying to drum up a gun registry.
Thank you.
I have just a quick question, and just want to know your personal feelings on medical marijuana and public use.
Marijuana saved my life, to be fully honest with you. When I got back home from Iraq, the VA had me on a whole laundry list of prescriptions. And it was those prescriptions, the lack of follow-up, the lack of continuity of care, and the readily availableness of alcohol really took me down a dark path. It is something I do strongly support. If we can't come to the agreement on a legalization or a medical portion of it, I do expect our elected officials to at least decriminalize it and stop putting people in jail for it. At the end of the day, there is nothing within the Constitution of the United States that allows the government to dictate what I can and cannot do within the confines of my home and on my property.
Do you have another question? Do you guys have questions? President?
Sure, yeah. Jacob, in terms of the economy, one area where the Ho-Chunk Nation in particular has issues with tribal housing, do you have any plans to roll out some funding for housing?
I'd like to essentially eliminate the federal income tax. I sat a couple weeks back at a town hall in Green Bay, and they were talking about the $300 a month child tax credit that was given out, and how that pulled 50% of America's children that were in poverty out of poverty. That's a significant number, okay? That very next day, I sat and looked at my paycheck, and there's more than that $300 coming out every single month in taxes. So if we were able to, so in my eyes, I see that the exorbitant federal income tax is actually forcing children into poverty and also creating the limitations on being able to afford homes. If we need to have a tax structure, I believe that those taxes should stay local within our own communities so that we do have the resources available to help fund stuff specifically within our own communities. But to be able to take tax dollars from an individual on the Oneida Nation and who is struggling and then spend that somewhere else, I don't see that being feasible. So to be able to help with the housing circumstances in each and individual community, again, lean on local level governance and local communities. My role within the federal government would be to reduce the size and scope of the federal government so that local communities actually have those resources to make the differences in their own communities.
Very good.
Jacob, I'm going to take the final question. I heard you talk about the significance of your own experience as a veteran and some of the perils associated with returning home. And obviously, I'm sure you're well aware that Native Americans serve at the highest per capita of all races in the United States military. However, as you pointed out, many of their needs are disproportionate to the resources available. So if you were to succeed in the 8th District, how would you continue to expand the necessary services to our veterans and making sure they got the necessary health, whether it be the mental health services, healthcare services, or anything else associated with that?
A wonderful question, and I have put a lot of thought into this. I'm a veteran myself, and for those that don't know, we still have an epidemic of 20 veterans a day committing suicide, and that's one of my biggest drives for this congressional run here is to help veterans. Post 9/11 veterans, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, we have lost 7,070 into combat. But those same demographics, post 9/11 veterans, Iraq and Afghanistan, as of May 2021, we lost over 30,177 veterans to suicide. And I do have a relatively simple fix. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Take some of the resources that are currently being spent in the VA healthcare system that is broken and actually man our veteran service offices at our county levels. Every county in the state of Wisconsin has a veteran service office. I've spoken with several of those veteran service officers. These offices are drastically underfunded and undermanned, okay? If you're a veteran and you need to go to the doctor or you need mental health care, you find a doctor and you go. Real simple. When you get the bill, you turn that bill into the veteran service office. They ensure it gets paid. We don't have to pass massive federal legislation. We don't need extra funding. That funding already exists. We've just simply cut through the red tape. Veterans go to the doctor and get the care that they need. And that could probably be applied to employment as well.
Sure.
The same veteran service office, that is supposed to be the key. Door County, where the county that I reside in, has one veteran service officer for all of the veterans of the entire county. And that's not the veteran service officer's fault. Beth does a tremendous job. But she's one person.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I guess Chairman Van Zyl has one final question.
Jacob, I apologize. I have a hard time hearing as you're speaking out to the people there. And so I'm just going to maybe recite another question that the former Chairman Reynolds had spoke of.
Sure.
Regarding the marijuana referendum.
Yeah.
Do you favor allowing the adults of 21-year-olds of age and older to engage in personal use of marijuana while also regulating commercial marijuana-related activities and imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana?
I would struggle a little bit with the tax, only so, one of the main reasons what we want to get to legalize marijuana is to pull it out of the black market. There's a lot of people, especially in the state of Wisconsin, that currently do consume marijuana, but are afraid of getting a product that has fentanyl laced in with it. So in order to provide proper consumer protections, we do want to legalize it, make sure it's available, and make sure it is safe. I do caution states that want to apply an exorbitant tax rate to it, because if that tax rate ends up making that product that is legal higher than the street price, the people are still going to continue to purchase it off of the street instead of actually buying the safe product. Legalization, absolutely. I do want to make sure it gets removed from the federal level as a Schedule I drug, also with psilocybin, so that it can actually be officially researched. We've seen tremendous amount of research on psilocybin and how it has affected veterans with PTSD when you're using micro dosages and it is controlled through a physician. That is something we certainly need to be researching. So yes, the legalization of marijuana, I do caution within the states of applying an exorbitant tax to it, because it's not going to help protect the consumers that we need it to be able to protect.
All right, thank you, Jacob. And if you just want to take a few minutes at the end here to just make your case as to why Wisconsin voters should vote for you.
I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be up here today. Third-party candidates don't always get the same screen time and the media press that that the other two major parties get. And in my race particularly, there is no Democrat that is listed on the ballot. So this is a very, very rare opportunity to be able to get a third-party candidate elected into office for the first time in a very, very long time. Libertarianism as a whole is growing. I am the state chairman, and we are picking up numbers and membership within our state party every single day. The one thing that I hear more often than not is we're tired of the political fighting. We're tired of the two parties fighting back and forth and nothing getting done. Running as a third-party candidate and as a libertarian, focusing on individual liberties and sovereignty, I'm hoping to be able to cross the bridge between the right and the left, bring people to the table to have those serious conversations and actually getting the country to move forward. Thank you all for your time, and I appreciate your support, and I definitely appreciate the wonderful questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jacob. Okay. We can't see if we're done. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, Sandra, what's next? Okay. So Doug's next? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Then do our panel? Okay. So we're doing Doug LaFollette, and then you're going to switch out for Lieutenant Governor Barnes? And then what about Brad?
So we squeezed an extra one in.
I tell you. I swear, at least one for the Mexico.
So Doug's gonna go first now?
I think that's what she said. And I think he'll be on the screen.
Okay.
I think so. Because we got LaFollette, and then after LaFollette,
Okay, so
LaFollette or LaFette?
it's LaFollette.
Is it LaFollette or LaFette?
Douglas LaFollette.
It's LaFollette.
Correct?
Yes, LaFollette. Okay. Do you want to introduce him, Chairman? I can give you a thing. It's just who he is.
So are you not in then, or?
Technology, right? Will we see him, Sandra?
Hello?
We won't see him?
We're not going to see him?
Hello?
We won't hear him.
Okay. I can't see anybody. All I see is a big orange screen.
Okay, so should we just proceed? Okay, Chairman, do you want to introduce him then?
Sure. Hello. We are here today. We are going to be speaking with Doug LaFollette. He is our Secretary, State of Wisconsin. The panel today is Chairman Hill, President Hosley from Stockbridge Muncie. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman Hill is from Oneida. Myself, William Reynolds, St. Croix. Chairman Van Zyl, Stockbridge Muncie Community, and President White Eagle, Ho Chunk.
He's from Skokie.
Secaucus, Chippewa, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. So just let him know we're going to give him a few minutes and then we're going to proceed with some.
Okay, we'll have a few minutes and then we'll do some questions.
No. Secretary LaFollette, the floor is yours. Can he hear us? Okay. Do you maybe want to reiterate that we're going to give him a few minutes before we take some questions?
Secretary, we'll give you a few minutes for introduction and we'll have some questions from the panel. So the floor is yours.
I can't, you're not very loud though.
Okay. Should we try it again? He says he can't hear very well, so maybe you could ask him to just have some opening remarks and then let.
Secretary LaFollette, we would like to hear some opening remarks from you, and then the panel will have some questions after.
I can't reach my volume controls now with this screen up. I'd have to go back into something, but I think my volume controls are normally set very high.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Secretary.
So you'd like me to go ahead now? Okay, as long as you can hear me, that's fine. How long would you like me to speak? For 5 minutes or what? Okay, but my opening should be like no more than 5 minutes, I presume. Okay, all right, here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I congratulate you on having this event. I think it's a very positive thing, and I think it's a good step forward in the communications that are necessary between the tribal people and the governments. I am very pleased to be invited to be here and speak. I've been a strong supporter and a critic when necessary of the way that the tribal people have been treated and the way they have been allowed to participate in government particularly. There's a long history that we don't need to go over. You folks know it as well as I do. In recent times, there's been some very positive things. I've worked with the tribal people on some serious conservation efforts to protect resources, to stop a major mine. We fought a mine together and we stopped a mine, which was important. And then we got the land into ownership of the tribe, which was very important. Now we're fighting another battle up in the northern Wisconsin over the preservation of water, protecting the water on lands that were ceded to tribal people. And I've been a strong supporter of that effort as well. So it's good to be here with you. My message in brief is very short. Turnout. We have a turnout problem. And for many years, tribal people were not active in elections. That's improved a great deal, and I congratulate you on that effort. But now we're facing a situation in an off-year election. Typically in Wisconsin, 100,000 fewer people vote in this election than voted 2 years ago, for example. And a lot of those people are Native people, minorities, students who don't get excited about the election when there's not a candidate for president. I'll end by saying this is, I think, the most critical election I can remember in Wisconsin history, and I've been involved for close to 45 years. If we don't elect our governor again to protect us from some of the horrible legislation that came to his desk, it will be a very sad situation for Wisconsin. And of course, I'd like you to help reelect me because I'm committed to keeping the election process out of politics. We don't need a Secretary of State who administers elections. We have an election commission, it's pretty good. The old election board used to be better, but the Republicans got rid of the election board and set up an election commission a few years ago. And we can talk about that if you'd like. So I'll end by saying it's key to turnout. If we turn out our people to vote this year, we'll be okay. If not, we could be in real trouble. Thank you very much.
Do you want to take questions? Should we take questions?
Thank you. If Chairman Hill, you have a question for him?
Sure. Good afternoon, Secretary LaFollette. So it's been several decades that you have started Clean Wisconsin and have focused on renewable energy.
I'm having trouble hearing you because part of the problem is you're in a big room and it's like an echo chamber.
All right, thank you. Secretary LaFollette, it's been several decades that you've been focused on starting Clean Wisconsin and have focused on renewable energy. How, if you are reelected, will you continue this effort?
I'm sorry, what?
If elected to continue as secretary, how would you continue the effort of Clean Wisconsin and renewable energy efforts?
Yeah, I apologize that I can't hear. I feel bad about that. Maybe if you speak right directly into the microphone, that might help. I don't know.
They could put the question. Sandra, is it a Zoom? Is it a Zoom though? Can you put it in the chat?
I don't know what to do. I'm sure my microphone is turned up
Okay.
as much as it can be.
Okay. No.
Yeah. I'm looking at my microphones. There, I hear you now. What was the question? Now I can't hear that now. That's just like,
Okay.
I could hear you for a second very loud and clear, but then that went away.
If reelected to secretary, how do you plan to continue your efforts with Clean Wisconsin and a focus on renewable energy for the next term?
I can hear that perfectly, thank you. Well, my office has a problem, and the problem is that the Republicans have decimated the office. When I was first elected, there were about 48 people working there doing a number of important duties and responsibilities. Governor Thompson and Governor Walker and the Republicans took all that away, except for the processing of government documents and the issuing of apostilles, which are an international document. If someone wants to do any business or communication with foreign countries, they come to the office and get a document called an apostille. So my actual responsibilities have been diminished. I've relied on my ability to speak out on issues where I can. I'm very proud of the fact that I founded the group called Clean Wisconsin many years ago. And the Clean Wisconsin has been a very active protector of our environment, and they've been working with the tribal people on these projects where the mining companies and other people have tried to encroach upon the resources of Wisconsin, and in particular the resources of the tribal people. So I would continue to do that. I'm a strong supporter of Clean Wisconsin, as you can imagine.
Secretary, you talked about the integrity of voting in elections and making sure that you keep the politics out of elections. How do you intend to make sure that all of the challenges we're finding and have found since the last national election in the state of Wisconsin with the attempts of redistricting to gerrymandering and different things, from your office, how do you intend to preserve the integrity of elections and uphold the democracy that is so important to all of us?
Well, again, I couldn't understand the details of that question.
Say it again. Do it again.
He's just typing.
Okay. Oh, he's repeating it.
And I can hear that perfectly, thank you. Well, you mentioned gerrymandering, and that is one of the worst things that's happened to our country. And Wisconsin is one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. But I also believe, as an elected official and as a candidate, to speak the truth. And the truth is, there's nothing I can do about it, because the gerrymandering is set by the legislature and the governor with reapportionment. And that is not going to be changed probably for the next 10 years now, the way it was set up this last time. So once we're stuck with the gerrymandering, Wisconsin is in harm's way, because even though Democrats get more votes than Republicans, Republicans get more seats in the legislature because of gerrymandering. We're stuck with it. It's a shame. I wish I could change it.
Do
Thank you, Secretary. Mr. Van Zyl, Chairman Van Zyl.
Good afternoon, Douglas Follett. Can you hear me? Sir, can you hear me?
Go ahead, speak slowly and loudly.
In Milwaukee County, marijuana referendum, do you favor allowing adults 21 years of age and older to engage in personal use of marijuana while also regulating commercial marijuana-related activities and imposing a tax sale of marijuana, a sales tax?
Okay, the question was about marijuana. I couldn't understand the details of the question as to what my opinion on marijuana is. I have been a supporter for years of the decriminalization of marijuana, and I think Wisconsin should follow the lead of other states so we have a uniformity between Wisconsin, for example, and Illinois as far as the ability to purchase medical marijuana and probably also recreational marijuana. I think it only makes sense to get the criminals out of the business and put it in the straight market where people have a choice if they wish to purchase it. I also hope that President Biden will go further in his recent decision. He pardoned people who are already out of prison, but there's several thousand people who are still in prison for only marijuana cases. Some of them have been there for 15 and 20 years. I hope the president will pardon those people as well.
A follow-up question, sir. What's your thoughts about changing some of the federal laws in Washington?
Changing federal laws about what?
About marijuana being a class 1 or the same as cocaine and heroin and some of these other uses of marijuana. You know, it doesn't fall under the same category. And
I'm having trouble understanding because of the echo. But if you're asking about what I think the federal government should do, even though I have no control over that, obviously, I think it would make sense. I think it would make, pardon? Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I agree that the federal government should change the classification. We should have uniform law for the whole country, so we don't have some states with one law and some states with the other. Unfortunately, given the Republican control of the U.S. Senate, unfortunately, because of the ability for them to filibuster, I doubt if the U.S. Congress will change that law. I hope they will, but I'm not optimistic about it, but I would support changing that. Again, it's always important for me to make it clear that as Secretary of State of Wisconsin, I have no ability to influence those things. A lot of people expect a candidate to be able to do something about things, and I have to be very honest about the actual power that I would have, that I do have, and I would have if I'm reelected.
Thank you, Secretary LaFollette. We have one more question from President White-Eagle.
Yes, good afternoon, Secretary. My question is in regards, you did outline some of the ways you have supported the tribal communities here in Wisconsin. In your upcoming term here after the election, what other ways do you plan to support the tribes and continue to develop our tribal sovereignty?
Well, again, I hate to be repetitive, but Secretary of State has minimal power over any of these efforts. I've always been a strong advocate. I've worked with tribal people whenever I could, and I would continue to do so in the future. If there's ever any need for tribal people to have an apostille for some reason, we certainly can make sure they can get those documents they need. I think the main issue for you all and for me in the next 2 weeks is to have a good turnout. For too many times, we've been discouraged from voting, and the Republicans have made it difficult by closing polling places, by requiring IDs that don't make any sense, particularly for tribal people in some of the states out west like Montana. I think Wisconsin has been better about that, but I certainly would speak out loudly if I ever heard of any situations where tribal people were being stopped from voting because of some silly identification problems. I would not be able to control that, but I would certainly raise heck about it.
Thank you very much. And that will be our last question for you, Secretary La Follette, and then we all appreciate your time.
Well, I thank you for having me. I'm sorry we had a bit of a communication problem, but we got through it because we're tough people, and we're going to get through the future together. Get out the people to vote, and we'll be okay. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Have a great afternoon.
Okay.
He's a pretty honest guy, huh?
Okay.
Can't help you with that.
That's okay. We made it
It was
work.
bound to happen.
Okay, so now what? We're good? Okay. No, but what's next? No. But we're not there. We don't have to do that. Okay. Okay. And then after Lieutenant Governor Barnes, are we going to Brad? So who is doing that?
Yeah, he's on at 2:45, Brad is.
Okay. Okay. So Chairman Van Zyl, when we start with Brad Pfaff, you can facilitate that one. And then we'll all ask. He's running for U.S. House of Congress.
How do you say his last name again?
Pfaff.
Pfaff? Paff. Pfaff.
Pfaff.
P-A-F. Pfaff.
Okay. So you'll let us know when we have to return? Yes. Okay.
So we-
All right. All right. We're tribal leaders. We're used to this.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. Okay.
That's yours.
Damn, it looks like you do.
A good friend of mine, she said, you always have your back to us. I said, no, that's because I'm contemplating my next move.
Did you write a book?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I'll have to get a picture of that.
Oh, hold it up.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
duh.
We'll do a couple.
No,
one,
we-
one with the book, one without. How's that? Does this,
No,
can you
no,
still
no.
see?
Hey, we're something else. We're gonna do it with the book.
Dude, something else.
So lower the book a little bit. Yep.
Hold on, let me get my something else done.
And then let me see the S. Here we go.
We're something else.
There you are. Perfect. All right. Then without the book?
Without the book.
All right.
All right.
She does all the media.
She does? Okay,
Yep.
great. Here's,
Levi. Thank you.
email that picture, those pictures, please.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Eric.
To Levi at nativenewsonline.net.
Correct.
You got it.
She'll be talking to you more and more
Okay.
because we're giving her more work as I get less.
As I learn more and more.
She's
Gotta say the right
actually-
thing.
She's actually coming back here and helping us work with we got budget things. And so we gotta bring different people in, like where
Could be the tipping point.
Okay, so I'll let you guys pick out which ones you want. I can watch out for that.
I'm just gonna take the.
You see, we almost got rid of Levi. Just tripped out. You guys can pick out which ones you want.
President, why we go where you gonna sit?
Sit. Can I stay here? Or you want me to,
It's up to you.
staging wise, I don't know.
And then,
Go
So
sit.
sit.
Yeah,
You
let's
wanna
go.
sit
and then
here?
Chairman, if you would do Lieutenant Governor Barnes a favor and introduce him.
Sure, sure.
And as you can see, the way I run things is I come up here and say, can you do me a favor, and then I leave, and then you get to do it all. But yeah, he would like to have you introduce him.
Okay.
And then what he's gonna do is he's gonna come on, and he's got a bunch of tribal issues he wants to just talk about, and then he'll be open for 2 questions.
Okay.
And I gave him that we were gonna ask these.
I got it to the
And
governor.
you don't have to
To-
read it
to us.
verbatim, but
Not him directly,
basically,
but yeah.
what he do on ICWA or on the Castro Horta case.
Okay. I'll let Levi pick.
You want me to do the first one?
Yeah. See?
You got the first one?
And you can break it down.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can break it down. Don't have to be.
Yeah.
Just kind of give him an idea.
So someone needs to read about the ICWA?
Huh?
We need to read about the ICWA to him?
Well, you don't have to actually read it because you probably know.
He probably knows about it.
Well, you probably know. Kind of just say, I want to talk about the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Mhm.
This is what it is. This is where we're at.
Mhm.
If it's overturned, what would you do?
Okay.
And then on yours is basically on the Castro Horta.
You want me to read this part, or?
Well, you can just put in your own words.
Okay.
Basically,
And then this is the question.
yeah. I just like to give a little.
Hey, this is Mandela Barnes. Perfect.
Are we ready? What? Just let us know what. Hey, and then can you put him on the screen so we know he's there? Like we did with the Secretary of State? All right, I see us, we don't see him. I guess we're not going to see him. All right. But he can see us if he's watching online? Okay, so is he ready?
I'm ready when you are.
All right. Pretty good. We can't see you, but we know you're there. All right, I'm going to let Chairman Waigo take over, do the introduction, then we'll jump right into it. Thank you.
All right, I'll say good afternoon to everyone here and those watching online, to the 4 Directions and Tribal Nations of Wisconsin Electoral Candidates Forum 2022 for the regarding the midterm elections. And it's my great honor to introduce our next candidate, and it's been myself. My name is Marlon White-Eagle, and I'm the president of the Ho-Chunk Nation here in Wisconsin. And part of my role as the president is to interact with our state, local, and federal partners. And the one that I have had opportunity to meet with on numerous occasions is our next candidate here, Lieutenant Governor, the current Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, and candidate for the U.S. Senate is Mandela Barnes. So I'll turn the floor over to the Lieutenant Governor to address the people here. So good afternoon.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman White Eagle, for having me. Not sure if I'm supposed to be on the screen or not. I just don't have the option to turn the camera on. But I'll go ahead and just get started. I want to thank you all so much for having me. Thank you for the invitation to this meeting, and I appreciate the introduction as well as the friendship, Chairman White Eagle. It's an incredible opportunity for me to be here with you all. Now, 4 years ago, folks all across the state of Wisconsin exercised their voting power, and people put their faith in me and elected me Lieutenant Governor. And I'll always be grateful and humbled by that support. Now, as your Lieutenant Governor, I've had an opportunity and the privilege of learning so much about our tribal communities, all the Native nations of Wisconsin, having an opportunity to visit all 11 federally recognized tribes. It's been an opportunity to learn about the ways and the importance of respecting the land that we walk on and the direct connection to the culture, the livelihoods of the communities, and the livelihoods of people all across this state. Now, when I took my oath of office, I said that we're going to leave the core principles of equity and sustainability. It was a promise to help make this state a better place for everybody, especially tribal communities that are so often left behind. Now, I'm incredibly proud of the work that my office played and the lead role in developing and making Indigenous Peoples Day a reality in Wisconsin. I've also had a chance to work directly with Governor Tony Evers to fund conservation projects that respect the land we call home, bring together Indigenous leaders, climate activists, farmers, amongst many others, to create 55 broad-based policy solutions on energy and the environment. I've also been deeply honored to serve on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force. Now, there's still so much more work to be done, but unfortunately, we don't have the representation in Washington that we deserve. But we know that if we are going to change Washington, we got to change the people we send to Washington. And that work starts today, because when I hear and read about the history of our state's Native Americans, I learn about resistance. When I look around today, I see resilience. And I also see the people with the power to elect a senator that supports and respects tribal sovereignty, and one who takes pride in celebrating the history and the power of the Native American community. Now, we have so much more to be proud of, and we still have so many hardships, unfortunately. But through all these struggles, I promise you that I will fight for you in Washington. Now look, I'm a black man from the city of Milwaukee, and while our struggles may have their differences, I know exactly what it feels like to be a part of a community that gets left behind, a community that gets ignored. And that's why I'll never let other marginalized communities go it alone. In this fight, it's about affordable quality health care. It's about our environment, and it's about going to the mat every single day in Washington for all of us. Because like majority of people in Wisconsin, I'm not a multimillionaire. I don't answer to high-paid lobbyists that only care about their profits. I don't have the backing of big oil or big pharma. But what I do have is skin in the game. I have profound respect for your culture, traditions, and Native American voices. And most importantly, I have the backing of honest, hardworking people just like you who are here today. People that know our greatest challenges are also our greatest opportunities. We have an opportunity to give everybody a fair shot, an opportunity to protect the environment, an opportunity to make sure that every child here today knows that their hopes and dreams are attainable. Now, I'm committed to listening, to learning, and also working to ensure that Native American voices are also a part of the change we need to move this country forward. Now, I'm running for Senate because I know better is possible. I know we can create a future where we work to protect the environment, respect tribal sovereignty, and also give everybody the opportunity to live a dignified life. And it's a fight for freedom, a fight for fairness in the future. And with your support, it's a fight that we can win together. Just want to thank you for having me.
Yep. All right. Lieutenant Governor, we have a couple questions here for you. I'm going to turn it over to Levi Rickert from Native News Online. So, Levi.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Governor. I understand you are the other Mandela, and happy you're running for Senate. And I'm Levi Rickert, Native News Online, proud citizen of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation. I don't know if you can see this, Lieutenant Governor, but I'm wearing the Something Else T-shirt. Back in on the election night in 2020, CNN referred to Native Americans as something else. So I hope you are going gun-ho 100% after the something else vote here in the state of Wisconsin. My first question is this, and it's just a little brief history. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 was in response to a crisis impacting American Indian and Alaska Native children, families, and tribes. Studies showed back then, the large number of Native children were being separated from their parents, extended families, and just at high rates. And the Indian Child Welfare Act is now under attack. There is a suit that's going to be litigated before the U.S. Supreme Court on November 9th, one day after the election. Tribal leaders across America are very concerned about this case. The question is this: if the unthinkable happens and ICWA is found to be invalid, it would have far-reaching consequences that will be felt for generations. It will weaken the protections of Native children. Would you consider introducing or co-sponsoring legislation to correct what would be a grave error by the U.S. Supreme Court if they rule against it?
Well, we've seen an activist Supreme Court strip fundamental rights away from half the population, and we know they won't stop there. And not only would I support legislation protecting Native children, I will fight to reform the Supreme Court in general to make sure that these sort of injustices don't happen anymore. And that includes making sure our Supreme Court justices abide by ethics standards that every other court in the country has to abide by, and also imposing term limits on Supreme Court justice. So the answer is absolutely yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We'll stick with the Supreme Court, Lieutenant Governor, in the Castro Huerta case. The decision, the Castro Huerta decision and Justice Kavanaugh's dicta was not only incredibly wrong, but it also incredibly dangerous for tribal sovereignty, i.e. states do not automatically have concurrent jurisdiction with tribes over non-Indians who commit crimes on an Indian reservation. That has always been the purview of the federal government. Would you consider introducing or co-sponsoring a bill to counter the damages this decision has caused and could potentially cause?
Well, absolutely. I always work to support and work to strengthen tribal sovereignty, and this ties in with the work that I've done on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force. Now, it's important to make sure that bad actors are held accountable, the folks who show up on reservation, commit crimes, and are able to get away with it. And this is the work I want to continue in the U.S. Senate, because once again, where our struggles may have slight differences, is still being a part of communities that have been left behind and ignored in our most difficult times is something that we have to be committed to changing.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the questions we had today. Lieutenant Governor, any closing remarks that you'd like to share?
Well, I want to thank you so much for inviting me. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to thank you for your friendship and ongoing support, and look forward to continuing all this important work that we've been doing together.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are the only questions, right?
We're clear. Okay. Good job, Bill. I'm gonna come visit you sometime.
Yeah, you gotta do it.
Was John? Was
John Greendeer? Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I was up there a couple times. Or one time when he was chair. That was painless.
Honestly, I'm Brad Peff's finance director. I am curious, because Derek Van Orden is not going to be here, is Brad going to just be speaking, or is this going to be a Q&A? This will just be a Q&A, got it. Cool, thank you very much for, appreciate that. Brad should be hopping in here in just a few minutes, but you said we'll be live in about 5? Perfect, sounds good. Yep, he'll be in here any minute now. Yep, it's all good, as long as Brad can see them. All right, thanks all. I'm going to pass this over to Brad now.
You want to close that door?
Can I get all the tribal leaders to come up here for Brad Dealey Bobber? Sandra, you know where all the other name plaques are? Uh-huh. Wash Day, Chicago, Omaha, no good.
What's that?
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
So, and Chairman Van Zyl is going to introduce Brad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do the introductions, right, for Brad, right?
No, he had to leave.
Okay, he had to wait.
Yeah.
So you're back.
All right, good to go.
In like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
So,
Justin, are we good down there?
this Brad Paff, is he's running for Congress?
Yep.
Congress candidate. So who wants to start first?
So you're gonna introduce him, and then you're gonna let him
Okay,
do
thank
opening
you.
remarks, and then however you want to facilitate it, Chairman, we'll go with it.
Yep.
Whatever you want.
I only have one question for him, so. Yeah, my phone died, so I had to run back up.
President, we're good to go whenever you're ready.
What's that?
Are we ready? Are we ready?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Brad Paff, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Well, good afternoon. I am Brad Paff, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to say hello. I hope that you're well. I'm a current Wisconsin State Senator representing Western Wisconsin in the United States House of Representatives, and I'm the Democratic nominee for the open U.S. House seat here in Western and Central Wisconsin. This is a seat currently held by Congressman Ron Kind, the longtime Democrat who's retiring. He's endorsed my candidacy. This is a seat that is extremely important for the makeup of the U.S. House of Representatives. The Democrats retain the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. They need to hold this seat. But this seat is extremely important as well, statewide for Democrats. For Governor Tony Evers to get reelected, it's very important that he does well in this congressional district. And he'll do well by continuing to work together, he and I, as we continue to reach voters. This is a swing seat. This is a seat that is a very geographically balanced district. But I am running for office because I firmly believe that we need to make sure that we focus on the needs of this district. I am running against an insurrectionist, someone who is not from this district, does not share the values of the people of this district, doesn't understand the community and the history and the heritage of this district. I am someone who has deep, deep roots in this district, and I am someone who always puts the interests of the people of this district first. If I get the opportunity to represent you, once given the opportunity to represent you in the United States House of Representatives, I want to let you know that I look forward to partnering with you on important issues like veterans issues, healthcare issues, making sure that we have economic development issues, that we can continue to grow this economy, recognize the importance of indigenous foods, making sure that we respect sovereignty and we respect people's rights. All of that is so very important to me, and I know it's important to you as well. And that is why it's a great opportunity for me to be with you this afternoon. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have, but my name is Brad Paff. I am the Democratic nominee for the open 3rd Congressional District seat here in Central and Western Wisconsin. And again, thanks for taking the opportunity to allow me to say hello. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Brad. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to our next panel to ask you some questions. We have the 4 directions and the Tribal Nations of Wisconsin Electoral Candidates Forum 2022. And on the agenda, we have your name on here, sir. And I would like to introduce you to Chairman Reynolds from the St. Croix tribe of Wisconsin. Chairman Reynolds.
Good afternoon, Congressman. I hope you're having a good day. I just kind of have just one question for you, and it's about the supply and demand in the state of Wisconsin and how it was affected through the pandemic, and how does Wisconsin look at it now, and how can we get a better supply and demand for Wisconsinites?
Well, I did my best to hear the question. The question is regarding supply and demand. I want to make sure that I heard that correctly. And I will say this, is there's tremendous demand for Wisconsin-made products and Wisconsin-grown products around the world and around this country. We need to make sure that we continue to supply that demand. And in order to supply that demand, we need to make sure that we continue to invest in manufacturing here in Wisconsin. You know, in Wisconsin, we used to make a lot of things, but due to failed policies from the federal government over the last 50 years, we come to rely too much upon imported products from around the world. We can make more products here locally, and I strongly believe in that. And my campaign is focused on investing in the supply chain by investing in local manufacturing. I have a background in agriculture. I served as our state secretary of agriculture, and when I served as state secretary of agriculture, I worked with our agriculture industry and our family farmers every single day to make sure that we continue to have good clean air and clean water policy, to make sure that we can continue to protect our natural resources while producing high quality milk and high quality grains. I worked to make sure that we invested in our food processing. All of that is so very important. And I want to partner with you. I think it's extremely important that we work together to partner, to make sure that we can make sure that we have locally grown food, indigenous food, to make sure that people have a diet in which benefits their health and doesn't provide long-term harmful implications. So I think it's very important, if I heard your question correctly, as far as supply chain and investing in supply and making sure that we have the demand for high quality local products, and I will do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Brad, we have another panelist here. We have President Halsey from the Stockbridge-Munsee tribe, and she would like to ask you some questions, sir.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Van Silen. Good afternoon. My question is around the government-to-government relationship. As unique, we have tribal nations share a unique relationship with the U.S. government in that of a government-to-government relationship as sovereign nations. And as our trustee, the United States has obligations for what was lost from land to our original homelands to so much more. And the relationship that we've had with the federal government has at times been extremely contentious, with always an impending assault on sovereignty. Also, as our trustee there, you talk about one of your charges is healthcare, and in Native nations, we have many systematic barriers that exist, as well as the trustee and the disproportionate rate of funding that we get from the government. Brad, how do you feel about stabilizing that, especially for tribal nations who have this unique relationship with the federal government and that trustee relationship in terms of mandatory appropriations for tribal nations?
Well, I'll be a tremendous advocate for tribal nations, and I will work very hard, and I'll do it in a bipartisan manner, regardless if the Democrats are in the majority in the House of Representatives or if the Republicans are in the majority in the House of Representatives, to make sure that the tribal nations, through the annual appropriations process, that there is the funding that is there for when it comes to tribal health clinics, for public health, when it comes to veteran services. All of that is something that is extremely important, and I will be a tremendous advocate for it. You know, I respect sovereignty, and I just want to let you know that that is something that I recognize that there's an awful lot of conversations that are constantly taking place, but I want to let you know that I respect sovereignty. I will work to make sure that there is a partnership that is continuing to be built, and one that's based upon respect with the U.S. government. May it be with the Department of Interior, may it be with the Department of Health Services, wherever it may be. I just want to let you know that I will build. I recognize that it is an equal partnership, and it's a partnership that needs to be built upon respect. And I will make sure that at the same time that the appropriations process, the annual appropriation process, that there is adequate funding, and that your voices are heard, and in my office will definitely be heard and be considered. So. I hope I did my best to answer that question. My reception isn't the best here online. I wish I was there in person, and I regret that I'm not. But I'd be happy to follow up if there's any further questions on that, or greater clarification that I could provide.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. We have another panelist here. His name is President White Eagle. He's from the Ho-Chunk Nation, and he would like to ask you a question, sir. Mr. White Eagle?
Yes, good afternoon, Brad. Good to hear you today. Glad you're participating and taking time to meet with us here today. My question is in regard to federal funding. Through the pandemic, we've seen a increased allocation to tribal nations. What's your plan to maintain that level of funding for tribes here in Wisconsin?
Well, I want to first of all, I want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership and for the tremendous work that the Ho-Chunk community provides in the 3rd Congressional District. And I value your friendship. And I greatly appreciate the work that you do every single day. I can just say this, as far as the, and I believe I heard the question with regard to federal funding for COVID and increased funding for tribal nations. And I think the most important thing that we can do is this, is that know that you've got a friend that you can call, a friend that is someone who will come to you, listen, someone who understands, some of the situations that you face, and someone that will be an advocate for you. So, we all recognize that when it comes to this upcoming federal budget, none of us are exactly sure what's going to happen with federal discretionary spending versus the entitlement spending. But the thing is that, we need to make sure that we have an advocate, and we have someone that understands the important role that trust with one another, and that we have to be able to work together. And, with me, you will have a relationship that is built upon trust and mutual understanding and respect. And I think that's important, is that, I am someone that seeks to partner, that I do not know what I do not know, and I need to continue to learn. And so, when it comes to the federal funding dollars for COVID or for anything else, I want to let you know that, you will have someone that will listen, you will have someone that will advocate, and you'll have someone to make sure that your voices are heard. And this isn't just in the House of Representatives. I will also make sure that your voices and your concerns are shared within the bureaucracy. May it be at the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, or may it be at the U.S. Department of Interior, or the Veterans Affairs Department. It's also extremely important that your voices are heard and that your concerns are shared. So, while I can't tell you specifically how, we're going to secure federal funding for COVID, I can tell you this, is that just like I am going to work hard to make sure the state of Wisconsin and our public health clinics get dollars available, I will work equally as hard to make sure that that you and all of our neighbors get their fair share. I'll make sure, I'll do everything I can to ensure that that happens. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Brad. Again, my name is Robert Van Zyl. I'm the tribal chairman of the Secaucus Chippewa tribe. Brad, I'm a former teacher, and I worked at ICS, the Indian Community School of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. One of the things that sticks out in my mind, and I know you're running for the Senate and Congress in Washington, D.C., but have you ever heard of Act 31?
Can you repeat that, sir? The last thing you just said?
Act 31.
Act 31. I can't say I know. I'm aware of that. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, sir, it's in regards to hunting, fishing, and land and water and our sovereignty, as well as our treaties. And I just wanted to say that to you, sir, because that's one of the things that's happening in the state of Wisconsin, the lack of education and awareness, and the importance that's behind that. The importance is, you know, do we want to continue with racism, or do we want to educate and make people aware of what's going on in the communities? You know, we have a fish hatchery. Every year we put out around 25,000 fingerlings into the lakes that we fish on. And 25 years ago, I asked this question to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources then. I said, do you have any baseline data about when was the last time you did a survey on these waters in northern Wisconsin? I never got an answer. And I have another question that I'd like to follow up on, sir, and I know you're running for the House of Congress, and you're a candidate. But one of the things that I wanted to mention as well is, what is your views on the marijuana referendum? Do you favor allowing adults 21 years of age and older to engage in personal use of marijuana while also regulating commercial marijuana related activities and imposing a tax on sales of marijuana?
Well, my position on marijuana is this, is it should be legalized. It should be legalized at the recreational level, and it should be legalized at the medical level. As a state senator, I represent a border district. I am on the border of Minnesota and Iowa, and Wisconsin is an island right now. And I do believe that is long past due that we legalize on the medical as well as the recreational. And I've got a voting record to demonstrate that my support for that at the state level. But I hear you. I hear you in regards to the lack of education, and I recognize the fact that more needs to be done when it comes to make sure that the Wisconsin public educated students within our public schools recognize the history of this state. And there's an awful lot of pressures right now as far as on public education. And we want to make sure that our schools receive equalized aid dollars that are fair and balanced. Our rural districts just as obviously just as important as our urban districts. So we want to make sure that the school aid formula works in our state. But yes, without a doubt, there more work needs to be done when it comes to educating our students regarding the history of this state and the founding of this state, and just the facts, what's taking place. I also recognize the important work that the Wisconsin tribal community does when it comes to fish hatcheries, and the work that you do as far as making sure that we can continue to have a very strong and robust wildlife and natural resources in this state. So thank you for that. I too have concerns in regards to the board leadership of the current Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. I think it is beyond the pale that one individual thinks that he is above the majority of the people of the state, and he's staying on the Wisconsin DNR board even though his term is expired. I think that's beyond Hebrews, and it's extremely disappointing. And it's sad that something like this can happen in our state, but it is happening. So more work needs to be done in making sure that we hold public officials accountable. I am of the opinion that this is we are public officials, and that when our term expires, if we're not reappointed, we should know enough to leave. But instead, we have one individual in particular on the Wisconsin DNR board that, quite frankly, doesn't follow the same type of moral understanding and common sense that the rest of us in this state has followed. And this is the first time, quite frankly, since the creation of the Wisconsin DNR board that we have a situation like this. And it's really, really disappointing. But again, I will do everything I can to make sure that we respect sovereignty, that we partner, and that we make sure that we have a DNR at the state level that is responsive and is working in partnership. And I will also, to answer your question in regards to the legalization of marijuana, I too believe that we need to move forward as a state and recognize the legality of that as the medical as well as the recreational.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate your time and your effort to be here with us. We respectfully hear what you're saying, and so we're going to take it about that far, and we appreciate it, sir, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't there in person. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for taking a good look at this congressional race. This is extremely, extremely important for the makeup of the U.S. House of Representatives. It's also extremely important that we do well here to help Governor Evers and other statewide candidates win the state of Wisconsin. So thank you again, and have a good rest of your day. I appreciate it.
So we're just going to move right into the next one.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll try the leaders panel.
Yeah. We'll see how they want it facilitated. Maybe Marlon can. Okay, so what? So how do we facilitate this next panel? So how do you want us to do this? Should we just keep going? What's that? Yeah, that's fine. No, this is it. Okay, so how do you want to facilitate this then? Okay. Okay, so the talking points then essentially, is this the things you want us to bring forward, or just for points of discussion, or just like to educate people, or what are you thinking? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that
No, I-
seems okay.
Actually, talking to you, you're more organized and know what to do than most tribes I work with.
Oh.
We're kind of radical.
We're ready. Are you ready?
Are we ready?
Sure. So how are you going to do this then, OJ? You're going to start, and then we're going to just kind of have our closing thoughts, or what are you thinking? Or just to talk to the importance?
Yeah, so they'll introduce them, usually they'll roll it over to when we start.
Okay. Okay.
Well, actually, I do it different. I ask each panel to introduce themselves, where they're from. It's easier that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Sure. We'll make it work.
All right, I think we had a very, very interesting day today, and I think, you know, the candidates were very important. They talked about issues that the tribes wanted to talk about. So if they didn't know about tribal issues or tribal sovereignty or treaties, I think they know it now. But to lead up to that, I think one of the most important panels that we have today is the Tribal Leaders Panel. These are the individuals that have, that basically have their own nation. I know I always talk about people of color, but we are tribes that have nations. We're not, you know, one of regular citizens, so our issues are always different. And we wanted to make sure that if you're listening, or you can come back and check at any time, is that your issues were covered by your tribal leaders. So with that, if I could have the panel starting with the president here, introduce themselves, the nation, and we'll go down the line and then we'll start the conversation.
Sure. Thank you, OJ. Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Holsey, and I serve as the president of my tribal nation. We are located in central Wisconsin. However, my original ceded territory is upstate New York, and we were in Massachusetts for a number of years during the Civil War, came across the Ohio Valley with the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin, and ended up in Shawano County. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and it's a pleasure to participate in such an important endeavor. You know, voting, I think all of my colleagues agree, is at the heart of democracy, is especially as sovereign nations. You know, we have duality to who we are. We are first and foremost citizens of our tribal nation, as well as citizens of the United States. And so it's complex because Native nations have a unique relationship as a political body with the U.S. government. And even before the Americas were the Americas and the Constitution was formed, Native nations always had the ability to self-govern and to manage their tribal nations in a very democratic process of how we voted, who we appointed to represent us. So today really represents something very near and dear to me. You know, especially when we all have an obligation to vote and we have that opportunity. I always say that voting is sacred because it is something, especially in the state of Wisconsin, that Native American citizens were allowed to do less than 100 years ago. Even women in Wisconsin that were non-Native were allowed to vote before Native Americans. And really it wasn't until after World War II that there was a significant push even for the United States to recognize Native Americans as U.S. citizens. So, and as you all know, that our tribal nations serve at the highest per capita in the military. So it is very significant, you know, and it's something that we always have not had the right to do, you know. And so, you know, when we are given that opportunity to choose who represents not only our tribal nations internally, but collectively, you know, we really are able to move the needle and take a stance on social and political issues. And that's really how the democratic process works. That is why it's so critically important, especially for tribal nations. We know what happened last year in the national election with regards to several years ago in the national election when Indian country engaged and made sure that we had our citizens show up to vote. And so it does work. There is a process. It doesn't mean it's an easy one, especially in the state of Wisconsin when you see so many systematic barriers that exist, especially in Native American communities and communities of colors, from redistricting to gerrymandering to just different issues that we all face. And there's a systematic issues and racial issues that exist not just in Native American communities but in all communities. But as legislators, we also know that we have a significant job to do because we know that all citizens aged 18 to 30 really haven't engaged in their civic and democratic process of voting. So we really have a lot of work to do to re-engage our communities, both tribal and just communities, to make sure that people are engaged in choosing who represents us. You know, Sharice Davids is a Ho-Chunk member. Her family is from Wisconsin, and she represents at a congressional level. And for the first time ever, we had now Secretary Haaland and Sharice Davids have that representation, and it was significant to be able to see ourselves, especially for a Native woman, to see herself in a position of authority and at a table of decision making. You know, and so if we are, I always say it's not about the next election, it's about the next generation, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we engage our citizens and our children in making sure that we exercise that ability to vote, you know. And so I always say the oppressor would not be so strong if he did not have accomplices among the oppressed. And really what that means is if we allow ourselves to sit on the sidelines and let other people make that decision for us by not exercising our right to vote, then we are the ones that are oppressing ourselves. You know, and so we have seen what, over the past 3 years, the systematic barriers that exist within our tribal nations and the vulnerabilities, especially around the lack of access to so many things. But I also want to remind us of the resilience that exists among tribal nations and their capabilities against, you know, genocidal practices, genocide, you know, even pandemics pre this pandemic, and yet we are resilient and we're still here, and that really speaks volumes as to Indigenous people and their capabilities. So I just, you know, as far as, you know, our right to vote and the Native American Rights Voting Act is significantly important, you know, and we really recognize that there has to be systematic barriers that are diminished both from a legislative perspective on a state level, and I remind all of you that tribal nations are sovereign nations. They are not sub-sovereigns to the state of Wisconsin or any state that they reside in. They have a political position in the United States, and it's really important for us to exercise that democratic partisan ability and make sure that we flex our ability and our relationship and make sure we hold people accountable and make sure not only that we show up to vote, but we find representatives to represent our positions, our challenges, and our situations in our tribal communities that we face on a daily basis, and making sure that those decision makers are also at the table when decisions are made about us, you know. And so I really think that there is federal legislation that is really sorely needed to establish a baseline that would be a consistent standard for voting in Indian country, because we are sovereigns and we are unique in our own sovereign right. And so particularly that gives the Native Americans the ability to continue to incur, you know, and oftentimes costly legal fees to defend just that right to vote and to franchise from state and county, and the laws and the practices that really seek to disenfranchise Native American voters. So to you, OJ, I would say that we really support that legislative fix and also the endeavor of exercising something that is so sacred to us and something that wasn't always afforded to even my grandparents were children of a boarding school experience, all four of them. They were born at a time where they weren't even recognized as U.S. citizens. And so they were denied basic human rights as human beings. So it's really critically important that we continue to seek and remove barriers for Native American citizens and our voters, and, you know, look at the Native American Voting Rights Act and support that, but continue to push the envelope and flex our political prowess and make sure that we advocate for what's right for our citizens and and the significant contributions that we are able to share with not only our tribal nations but with the United States.
My name is William Reynolds, and I come from the northwest part of Wisconsin. Our tribe is scattered over 4 counties, and when I was elected, you know, it was an eye-opening experience with just our tribal elections, and seeing how many people did not show up, you know. And so getting out and trying to advocate our young people, like President Hoseley said, you know, from 18 to 30, you know, they don't think it's, you know, they don't have a voice. They don't matter until they have a strong career or something like that. So in our community, we have a couple community workers that are diligent, working very hard every day to get out to vote for, you know, our young people, you know, and we're trying to change their minds by not just looking at, oh, we got to go vote in November, but I mean, we have votes every day in our communities, every day in our counties, you know, and those start at the lower levels sometimes. I wouldn't say not important levels, but lower levels, because, you know, we have road issues in our, you know, not just in our counties, but our townships. Nobody goes and votes on. You know, saying, hey, we got to get to our townships. You know, we're part of this township too. We got to get out and make some of these votes count for us, because, you know, a lot of our tribal sovereignty, you know, falls back to them too, and they need to understand where we come from and what we're doing. The restrictions on roads, what we can and can't do. Some of our big tractors that we use to grade roads, we can't go on because they have a limit on it. So we have to figure out a way to get around it, another 30 miles that we could probably cut in half, but we never went out and voted saying, oh, that's a township issue. Then, you know, of course, when that doesn't help, where do we go? We go to the county. Then we go to, you know, the steps that we take, we're we all need to look at and start at those lower levels and make those friendships early, because they're always not going to be at those township levels. They're going to want to move up to county levels. County levels move up to the governor levels and the Senate and the Congress, you know. So when we make those relationships count early and work with them diligently every day, you know, and showing our young people their vote does count, you know, that it goes a very long way. We talk about our hunting and fishing rights. We have roads that we can't go down because our trucks are too heavy for the roads, and we don't have a say in that. But we do have a say in it. We always just kind of pass it on. Oh, you know, we'll find a different way. We'll do this. But, you know, so we're teaching our young guys and our young gals, you know, to come show up for our votes, because we have to work two governments. We work the tribal government side, and then we work the U.S. government side. And we're trying to teach them that, you know, it's just not one government that we work with, that we adhere to. We adhere to our own. And we also want to make lives better for everybody in our counties, our states, our townships. And that's what we push for in northwestern Wisconsin right now on our issue, is trying to get everybody out to vote, our younger people to understand that their vote does matter. You don't have to have a job to vote. You don't have to have millions of dollars to vote. Just get out and vote and make that connection with your own tribal government, with your own, you know, your own township voting. You know, who do you want in your township? Who's going to make a difference, you know, that affects our tribe? You know, what roads can be paved and which ones don't? Who makes these decisions? You know, those are the issues that we kind of push with our youngsters now and today. And one of the gentlemen that helps us get through that is Mike Decora. He's a very good advocate for us for that, so I'd like to recognize him. And but yeah, you know, our tribe is really pushing really hard this year. We're, you know, harder than I ever have. You know, I was one of those ones that listened to my grandfather and my grandma. You don't need to vote. Your vote don't count. We don't mean nothing here. You know, we live on a reservation. So, you know, that's changed since, you know, I've been elected, and you know, working on some of that with our younger youth, you know, besides some of the other issues, school issues and stuff like that, you know, oh, I'm just a different nationality going into this school, I don't matter. But getting them out to vote and understanding how to vote, when to vote, who to vote for, is just to get out and vote. We don't care who you vote for. You know, we just want you guys to get out and vote, pass the word on. And we do talk, as leadership, we do talk about this a lot. But yeah, that's about all I got to say, is that, you know, in our small communities, and we have some small communities, that's what we do, is we go out and try to say, hey, get involved, even if it's in your township boards. So we do make those connections, and it's kind of weird when you walk in and say, hey, you know, I'm from here, we want to know what's going on, and they just say, we never see you guys here. We never see tribal council here at these little board meetings that we have for our township roads and our campgrounds and stuff like that. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chairman Reynolds. My name is Robert Van Zyl. I'm the chairman of the Secaucus Chippewa tribe, excuse me, in northern Wisconsin. As these people were talking, I wrote down a few things, and one of the biggest things that we're dealing with in northern Wisconsin is people to get out to vote. Please get out and vote. And if we have to, we'll take our vehicles, put you in our vehicles, drive you to the polls, do whatever we have to do. You know, I wanted to share a little story with you people, just so you can kind of get the gist of where I'm at. In 1970s, a mining company came to northern Wisconsin, and they said, We discovered gold. We discovered ore. And what happened after that was a pretty amazing thing. And what had happened was the Exxon Corporation came to our community. Then we had to deal with other mining companies. Phillips Dodge, Chevron, these other mining companies like Broken Hills Proprietary, and these other major corporations. Rio Tinto Zinc. Rio Tinto Zinc is from England. Their main headquarters is stationed in Johannesburg, South Africa. We had to go over there and talk to those people to get our point across. But you know how I did it? Exactly what Chairman Reynolds had talked about. Getting out the vote to the towns, cities, municipalities, education departments, school boards, all these things. We had to get our people to the polls to vote. And that's the big thing that's happening today, is people not taking the time to get out to vote. We have to get those people out there, and we need them out there. And again, we need our people to get to the polls, and we need to make sure that they have that opportunity and that right. Because a lot of our people, our elders before us, suffered the hardest consequences of not being able to vote. And that's the hardest thing that we have to deal with today, is trying to deal with people that don't understand the things that our ancestors had to do to get us this far. You know, the other part that I wanted to mention is the importance of our language, our culture, our identity, as well as sovereignty. If you look on this, on our emblems here, you see a yellow emblem, a red emblem, a black emblem, and a white. That's a representation of 4 directions. It could be a representation of how people live in this world. But it's multi-dimensional. And a lot of things, when you look at Native thoughts and views, it's in 4s. And a lot of things that you see today, our language, our culture, our identity, and our sovereignty. I often ask this question to some people. Where did sovereignty come from? Where sovereignty came from, in our view, in the Native view, indigenous view, it came from our Creator. Why? Is because we have a covenant. That covenant is, we speak for the ones that are not able to speak. The trees, the plants, the animals, the water, the environment. That's who we speak for. And that's why we need to get our people out to vote. The importance in that relationship. That's how we, in my community, define our sovereignty, along with our language, our culture, and our identity. If you don't have your language and your culture and your identity, You're going to struggle in life and you may not be able to find out who you are. So, and one of the other things that I wanted to mention very, very briefly, sir, is this. In the town that I live in and is 8 miles away, and then 14 miles away from where I live is another community, a Native community. And in the middle, so to speak, is this small town. And in that small town, they don't acknowledge our tribal governments. And they have two nations living there, and we're 14 miles apart from one another. And that's why we need to push for better education for our children. 1/4 of that school's population is Native children, and we don't have a Native person on that school board. Those are the kind of things we deal with on a daily basis. So these are things that we deal with. And I know some of you are running for Congress. I know some of you are running for Senate, running for governor. A lot of those things may not pertain to you, but they pertain to us. Us people that are sitting up here. Maybe all of us don't have the exact nature of issues, but when you kind of look under the covers, so to speak, they're all the same. So I want to say about that much, and I really appreciate the people here for allowing us this opportunity. The Four Directions, Tribal Nations, Wisconsin Electoral Candidates Forum of 2022. I thank you. Miigwech.
All right, greet you all. Good afternoon. My name is Marlon White Eagle, currently the Ho-Chunk Nation president here in Wisconsin. And the Ho-Chunk Nation, we are a tribe with no defined reservation here in the state of Wisconsin, but we do have land all throughout the state in that is held in trust through the federal government, and that we have various communities, so we're scattered throughout the state, and it's very you know, I guess a real journey to be in the seat here as the Ho-Chunk Nation president, that we get to see, we get to interact with our local government as well as the state government and the federal government. So it's always kind of eye-opening experience to see that, you know, in these positions that we get elected to, that we're always fighting for the tribal sovereignty, you know, attacks against it, whether it's with our children or with our resources or with our commerce, that we're always, in one way or another, we're standing up for our tribal sovereignty and trying to maintain that and grow it, and kind of remind our federal partners all the time that there's a responsibility, obligation to them to work with us and let us be a part of the decision making. And so what we've seen through the history of Indian nations and the United States is that we've seen these different federal policies that were enacted to deteriorate our culture, and we witness that every day. And you know, I was at an event last Friday with Wisconsin Native Votes organization down in Milwaukee area, where we have not only Ho-Chunk members, but other members of the Wisconsin tribes and various other tribes probably through Indian Relocation Act that there I've seen signs that they shared. You know, we hear they say "Skoden," like "Let's go then," and they had they threw in there in between "Skoden," they threw in "Sko vote then," and it was kind of like a native approach to get out the vote, and it was really resonated, and it kind of made you feel like, you know, hey, we're part of a bigger community, a native voting bloc, if you will, that we can align with the candidates that value similar priorities that Wisconsin tribes have for issues on climate and the environment, as well as voting rights, as well as reproductive rights. So those are things that I've seen through the time here today with candidates coming forward, and you know, with the Ho-Chunk Nation, we're a 4-branch government, and the president, the seat that I'm in, it represents the entire nation. And then I see that similarities here in the state government as well as on the federal government, that you know, there's 2 political parties. Today we had some members of I'm not sure if they're called independent parties, but other parties that aren't Democrat and Republican, and that's really good to see that these candidates are coming forward to you know, take notice of the native vote, and that's really outstanding to see, and really important that, you know, we vote our priorities, and we learn about our candidates. And you know, I heard President Holsey say that, you know, mention one of our tribal members, Sharice Davids, on the sitting in the U.S. Congress, and you know, that's one of the things that she did was embracing the opportunities that are before her, and through there she, you know, became an attorney, and then that propelled her into open doors for her through education. Not that we have to have education to make it a difference, but that it helps when it comes to gaining a seat at the table, as well as being able to steer the direction of the nation, as well as our tribal nation. So it's really advantageous to get out there and do something to effectuate change and make things better for our neighbors as well as our families. And that's really glad that OJ, that you and 4 Directions, you know, set this up here, recognizing that Wisconsin's very important on the national political scene, that it's important, and I really thank you for the opportunity here today. We got to sit again with our current governor, and as well as our current lieutenant governor, and you know, we found strong partner with them, and you know, that this midterm election here is really important for not only the tribal nations here in Wisconsin, but throughout the U.S. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, President White Eagle. And I'll just have closing remarks, but as he had expressed, we really want to thank, I first want to thank the tribal nations of Wisconsin and my colleagues for joining us today, but also the 4 Directions Native Vote, the National Congress of American Indians, the Native American Rights Fund, and of course the Great Lakes Intertribal Council. Collectively and unifyingly, we all recognize that there is power in the collectiveness and the endeavors that we've all discussed today, both among ourselves, as Chairman Reynolds talked about. We talk about this frequently, of that engagement, that civic engagement, but also with the people that are running in these seats to represent our interest. And I always say to people, you know, vote like your life depends on it, because it might. Because the decisions that you make and the people that make those decisions on your behalf may at some point inflect what's happening in our tribal communities and all communities all over the state of Wisconsin. Every day there's an assault on sovereignty, and it really requires representation and partners and allies to help us fight the good fight, as well as making sure, especially in the state of Wisconsin, where there is an assault on women's reproductive health and the right to choose, as well as the ability to have clean air and water and affordable housing and all the other things that are, in my opinion, basic human rights. And really that's why we're all here today, is to just tell you how significantly important it is to engage. And you heard Chairman Van Zyl talk about the erasure of people of color, and especially, but we do know this, we do know that the future is female. In the United States, females represent 51% of all citizens. We also want a world where there is inclusion of all people, where there is abilities for all people to have that parity and that inclusion and be able to expect human rights, because we the people means everyone. So it's going to require all of us to show up, and there is still time in the state of Wisconsin. You can show up on election day and still register to vote and cast your vote. There is wisconsinvote.wisconsin.gov that you can go to and find out if you are registered to vote, or update your voting information, or just show up at the polls. Every tribal nation has representatives that can assist you. NCAI.org has a website that will also have a toolkit to guide you if you have any questions. But really, it is so critical to all of us, and voting is absolutely sacred. And if we say that the future is our children, then we have a responsibility to our future generations to make sure that we create a world that, a better world for them than the one we are navigating in and found one. So, Anishik.
Okay, well, I believe that concludes it, and I just really want to let you know from my heart, I really appreciate the time, the sacrifice that you put in today. I like the fact that you were able to let these candidates know your issues. And just one real quick thing, Native News Online did a survey, and the number one thing in Indian country that concerned them was our treaties and our sovereignty. And so that message is getting out there. But I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's because of tribal leaders like you that we're able to have a voice, because your members listen to you. So with that, Wopila, thank you very much.
Okay, guys.
All right, can we get the Mr. Moore and Sandra, if you can just real quick come up here. I would like you to talk before we do our closings about how they would get your media kit and stuff and what they need to do. Pretty please. And then Mr. Ragona, Mr. Wright. You know what, I'm going to throw a quick curve in this. I would like Janine Abrams to McLean to also come up and help us give a closing. She has been a champion and helped us out so much that I would like her to say a few words at closing. And then Mr. Moore, please come on up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we will be getting in touch. You got the address. Yeah. Thank you. Sandra never knows when I'm going to ask her to do something. There you are. I couldn't see you. Those lights get bright. It's hard to see. Sandra, where are you?
Sorry, I apologize. We were given some gifts, as we do, to say thank you to our tribal leadership for being here. I'm Sandra Mitrovich, Civic Engagement Manager with the National Congress of American Indians. And Nemwenin, thank you all for joining us on the live stream. Those that have hung in, I know you've tuned in and out throughout the day. It's been a long day, so thank you for those of you that have come on board. And thank you also to those of you that are out in community that are doing this work. We have a lot of different organizers that are here in the audience, those that are out doing this work collectively in their own communities across the country. And so Get Out the Vote work is definitely something that is an ongoing effort. You heard that today. If I could just plug a few things that we heard today and just kind of reiterate that it is a collective effort. It's a collective effort across our communities. It's a collective effort that requires allyship. And so that we can come together and support one another to ensure all of our voices matter. I'm Time and Yamani Maidu from Northern California, but I live and learn and work on the lands of the Numu and Washoe people in what is now Northern Nevada. And so it's exciting to be a part of a state like Nevada where I get to work in GOTV alongside tribal nations there, but I also get to do that across the country with NCAI. So one of the things that is really crucial for us is, again, partnering with national organizations and others to really help support the work that's going on, both grassroots, so in community, but then also helping support people where they are. I think that's really important because we're all in different places and spaces. Not all of us have civic engagement coordinators in our tribal nations or within our communities, and so it's really great when we can come together and help support one another in building capacity. And so one of the things that we're focused on with Get Out the Vote with the National Congress of American Indians is ensuring that we're helping support building that capacity. Tomorrow, I'm excited, we'll get to have, working with Wisconsin Native Vote and others, Native Organizers Alliance, which is another national Native organization. We get to spend some time in community here tomorrow from 9 to 12 at the Ho-Chink administration offices. We'll have some information on the Four Directions website about where that's going to be. It's open to the public. We're going to be talking about what Get Out the Vote work is and where we're at right now in the canvassing effort and what you can still do to ensure that you show up on Election Day, but also just participate in the effort moving forward and how we can support you in that work. So that's one first thing I wanted to mention. The second is there's a lot of resources out there. So many of you heard about the resources today throughout the day. So organizations like Illuminative, Indian Collective, Native Organizers Alliance, National Congress of American Indians, and various other grassroots organizations have a lot of resources out there for you. So definitely connect with us. We'll help get you connected to them. There's also really great national training partnerships. If you heard from candidates today and you yourself are interested in wanting to run for office someday, but you don't know where to start, there's also organizations like Advanced Native Political Leadership that also do training to help Native candidates run for office. So there's just a lot out there. Definitely connect with us so we can help support you in strengthening your voice, and we look forward to helping you do that. The Native Vote Toolkit that we are going to be putting up on our website this week there's a couple of different one-pagers that will talk about redistricting. If you heard that term today and you're really not quite sure what it means, we have information that we'll be putting up there this week for you so that you can see how did your area fare in redistricting. What does that mean? You heard the terms gerrymandering. What does that mean? We also talked about the American Community Survey. It doesn't go out to everybody like the census, but it's something that is selective. How does that factor into ensuring that your tribal nations has adequate data for resource allocation? So the American Community Survey. We talk a little bit about in that toolkit about that. We also talk a little bit about the pathway to 2030 and the decennial census. We don't want to be thinking about the decennial, the next decennial, and how that data matters a year before we start collecting it. We want to be thinking about it now and how our organizations and our communities can come together and make sure that that count really matters, and it also accurately reflects our tribal nations and communities, so that we know that those resources that are allocated are indeed matching how we are counted in our communities. So I just again want to say Nimwenen, thank you from myself, my team, the Civic Engagement team with the National Congress of American Indians, and others today for your time and just the work that you do day in and day out to make sure that we continue to power build in our communities. So thank you.
All right, we're getting very, very close to ending this, but because she's a guest, I would like for Janine Abrams McLean to come up first to give a few words of wisdom, and we will get this show on the road.
Thank you, OJ. Again, I'm always so honored to do any work with you, to be with Four Directions and with all the other partners who are here. I just want to reiterate how important it is for everybody to get out to vote, how important it is for us to realize that we're all related and that we are all one people, and all of us need to get out and make sure that our voices are heard. You've heard all the resources today. The one that I will reiterate is, if you have any issues when you are at the polls, to call the Voter Protection Hotline, which is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Lawyers right there ready to stand there and help you out. And then, as Sandra was saying, we're thinking not just about the midterm elections, but definitely vote, but we're also thinking about in the future. And one of the tools that we launched at Fair Count last week is our Vote Share Gap tool that we have. And right now it's only for southern states, but over the next few months we will roll it out for all 50 states in the country. And what that does is it not only tells you what the vote share gap is in your county by race and ethnicity, it will also tell you how many additional votes you need to close that gap to make sure that we have an equitable electorate. So whether it's 70 additional Native Americans to vote, or 700 additional Black people to vote, or 75 additional Latinx people to vote on top of those who show out, we'll have that data, and we want to put that data in the hands of folks that are on the ground so they have a real goal to look at and a real number to shrink. And so if you go to vote-365.org, you can learn more about our programs, and if you go to faircount.org, you can learn more about that. And so at the very end, just a reminder that, like I said, I have family in Wisconsin. Two of my sisters were born and raised for a little bit in Madison, right here. And so I'll be encouraging all of my family and my friends to vote. And if you could do us a solid and encourage all of your relatives in Georgia and these other states that we've been talking about today to vote, we'd really appreciate it. So thank you again, OJ, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Now I would like to call on Larry Wright, the CEO of the National Congress of American Indians, which is the oldest Native American organization in the United States.
Thank you, OJ. Again, on behalf of the National Congress of American Indians, it's my honor to have our organization help be a sponsor and a supporter of this important event here in Wisconsin, but all the other events that OJ and NARF and our partnership is committed to helping fight for our sovereignty. And as we said, as you heard all day long, it starts with our power and the strength that we have in numbers and the unity that we have in numbers when we vote. And whether it's for whatever party, we want people that are willing to go to office and fight to help defend our sovereignty on every level. National Congress was started in 1944, and we have been fighting for that sovereignty ever since. And it's our commitment to renew that commitment and continue to do that on every level that we can. We continue to see our sovereignty being attacked on every issue that affects our tribal nations, that affects our Native people, and that's not negotiable. And we can only do so much, but there's so much power in your vote when you vote and you elect officials that are mindful of that, respect our sovereignty, and are going to help us defend that. So again, on behalf of the National Congress, we thank you very much for all of those that attended, the tribal leaders that took time out of their schedules to be here, the candidates running for office. We thank all of you for participating in this important series. Thank you very much. Gatega.
I really don't want to introduce the next guy, but I got to because he's part of NARF, and I wouldn't get away with this. So I would like to invite Don Ragona up here with the Native American Rights Fund to say a few words. Huh, he took off. Where's Don? Get over here. Jeez. And that's why I didn't want to call him.
I wanted to thank everybody for participating today, the tribal leaders, those individuals who are running for election in the great state of Wisconsin. Thank you so much for taking the time, for asking the questions, and for answering the questions. I also want to thank those folks who are here in person and those who participated virtually. Your participation is so important, not just for listening to what the issues are and how our candidates want to and how they will respond to the questions asked. But I'm going to ask that you take that information and pass it on to your communities. Help us reach out to other tribal members. Let them know, take what you heard today and let them know how important their vote is, how important they are as individuals. You know, long time ago, our Native men and Native women, they were armies of one. They could do anything individually, and collectively, they were unstoppable. So I'm asking you to reach down, remember your ancestors, remember where you came from. Be that army of one, and then collectively, be that unstoppable warrior mass that can change the tide of elections, that can protect your tribal homelands, that can protect our sovereignty. Support the work of our sponsors of 4 Directions Native Vote, of the National Congress of American Indians, of the Native American Rights Fund, of the Great Plains Tribal Council, and all the tribes here. Support them, back them. Give them the energy, whether it's monetary support or whether it is moral support. Let them know that you're in their corner. And be the foot soldiers, be out there. Get that Native vote out, because we can make a difference. And it's so important this election year and in the coming couple of years. It is so important that our voice be heard. So on behalf of the Native American Rights Fund, John Echohawk, our board of directors, and our staff, and the clients that we serve, thank you. Thank you, OJ, for putting this on. And thank you for all who participated and listened. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, the next one I'd like to call up is O.J. Siemens. Oh, that's me. Okay, we'll get this done. What I want you to do is to think of a reason why you should vote. I mean, we all have reasons why we shouldn't. If you have a kid or a child that's going to school, you should vote, and we should get our people on election boards. If you want some type of different voting, satellite office or remove voting barriers, you should vote somebody on a county commission. If you have problems with City Hall, you should be able to vote and put a Native on there. When we were talking about voter suppression and stuff tonight, it wasn't just because of the U.S. president, even though, you know, yeah, we did get him in. It wasn't because we were able to elect people in the Senate. It wasn't able because of our our people in U.S. Congress. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was. But really, that voter suppression is aimed directly at you and your family. They don't want you on school boards. They don't want you on a county commission. They do not want you on water boards. There are so many things that affect you every day, if not you, your family, that you have a reason to vote. And as I said earlier, when they said we polled all the most likely voters, we're polling all the most likely Native non-voters. You can make a difference in this. You're not a part of the polls. You can take and really surprise what's going out there. Wisconsin, it's going to depend on the Native vote. There are, Justin, can you pull up that Nevada or the Wisconsin population I showed you earlier? Way earlier. Start where it says background. But in Wisconsin, I mean, it's going to be hundreds, if not a few thousand votes that is going to decide who's in the Senate, who's your governor, who goes to Congress. And when we talk about the U.S. Congress, we talk about the U.S. Senate, we talk about the governor, all those affect your treaties. Why not elect individuals that know and understand our treaties and that are friend to Indian country? You know, I don't care what party they are. I care that they care about your issues. I want it so that when you elect them, you get better housing, get better transportation. These are the things why we need you to vote. And I can tell you right now, I can't do it alone. These organizations can't do it alone. We need you, every individual Native that's in Wisconsin, that's in Nevada, that's in Georgia, that's in Michigan. We need you to take that time, step up, and we need you to really do the warrior. We don't need guns and arrows anymore. All we need is a pen or a pencil and go in there and check a box. And it's not that hard. If you look up here, you're going to find out that the Native age voting population in the battleground states, all right? And if you look at Wisconsin, you have a Native age voting population, 98,309. Can you bring that up a little bit there, Justin, please? Or, yeah. And we're going to put this on our website. You can stop there. But we actually broke it down to the amount of tribal members. And if you remember when Janine talked about the gap, we're getting better at that. So we're not going to not only be able to tell you, you know, what's going on there, we're going to be able to tell you in 2024 how many more of our members that we need to get out to make that difference, to fill that gap. And honestly, non-natives, or I should say white people, or Caucasians, they show up 65, 70%. And if we're to make a difference, we need to make sure that we are starting to turn out at 55, 60, 70%. In the Georgia special election, those self-identified as Native American Indians, their turnout was 71%. I mean, that's what we as people need to start looking at, trying to get our people to do. So this is all going to be on our website of fordirections.vote. We're going to share it with National Congress of American Indians. We're going to share it with the Native American Rights Fund. But it's really important, you know, that we end this knowing that we now have a job. We now have a duty. And that job and that duty is to be able to vote to protect our treaties, protect our sovereignty, and to be a warrior. When you go in there, if you're given any type of problem, warrior up. Make sure you vote. Don't let them push you around. They've been trying to push us around for, you know, with genocide for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they haven't succeeded. Let's not let them succeed now, and let's show them the power of our people this coming midterms. Midterms are important. With that, Wopila, I really appreciate everybody's time and effort and all my friends that have come here and took the time for this to work. And I'm going to be going around to different reservations in Wisconsin here. I hope to say hi. I'm not running for office. But I want to see our brothers and sisters be able to participate and make the Wisconsin tribal nations actual nations with power. So, Wopila, thank you.